अस्सलाम वालेकुम रहमतुल्लाहि व बरकातुहू। वेलकम टू माय चैनल। कैसे हैं सब लोग? आई होप सब ठीक ठाक होंगे। आज आप लोगों के लिए एक और बहुत ही खूबसूरत सी वीडियो। आज हम देखेंगे एक बहुत ही खूबसूरत सी डॉक्यूमेंट्री जर्नी ऑफ स्पेस की। जैसे कि मैंने आप लोगों को अपनी पिछली शारजा साइंस म्यूज़ियम वाली वीडियो में बताया था कि मैं आप लोगों के लिए एक और वीडियो लेकर आऊँगी जो कि एक छोटी सी डॉक्यूमेंट्री है। तो आज हम देखेंगे लाइफ इन इंटरनेशनल स्पेस। जैसे कि आप लोगों को मालूम भी है, कुछ टाइम पहले यूएई से सुल्तान अल नयादी भी स्पेस स्टेशन गए थे और वहाँ की लाइफ कैसी है, तो चलें आज हम इस डॉक्यूमेंट्री के थ्रू देखते हैं। आई होप आप लोग इसको एंजॉय करेंगे। सो लेट्स वॉच।
Beefy rocket, ignite the engines, and hop, you are in space. What next? You enjoy the adventure that space has to offer. Fly with no speed limit, avoid asteroids. How about some space acrobatics? And yeah, defend Earth from aliens. Or not. Lo and behold, it's not. Flying to space is far from a routine job, and not everyone is cut out for this. Why not? Because you get into a rocket, which shot up at the speed of 29,000 kilometers per hour, to a place without air, where everything gets frozen in a blink. For something like this, you have to be perfectly fit and have nerves of steel. You have to have a clever head, too. Sometimes things go wrong in astronautics, and you have to know how to get out of the trouble. Fortunately, there are people who can do all of this. One half of the world calls them astronauts, the other one cosmonauts, and the third half calls them taikonauts. They are carefully prepared for their trips to space for a long time. First of all, they have to learn really a lot about the universe, about flying and rockets, about the space station, and they must keep themselves fit. If you are overweight, you will simply fail the job interview for an astronaut. In space, every kilo counts. After all, lifting just 1 kilo into space costs more than 40,000 euros. This means that a kilo of space load is more expensive than a kilo of gold. Of course, astronauts also train for the situations they'll go through during the takeoff or when in space. They have to get used to the high G-force during the takeoff and during their return back to Earth. The training is done in a high-speed centrifuge. One of the most amazing things about being in space is weightlessness. The force of gravity affecting you in the Earth's orbit equalize, and you can float freely in space. But how do we train for weightlessness down on Earth? Quite easily. You only need water. Lots and lots of water in a large swimming pool. Although it's not a perfect solution, but floating in water is quite similar to floating weightless in space. And if you like, you can have your own aliens there too. Or your adorable pet. After all, space has hosted quite a number of species. Tiny flies, mice, monkeys, dogs, rats, rabbits, cats, turtles, fish, jellyfish, spiders, and even frogs. And how many people have flown to space? Quite a few, actually. More than 550 brave terrestrials. So, if you dream of becoming an astronaut, you definitely got a chance. The ultimate adventure awaits you. And what's a trip to space like? First of all, you'll have to control the need for personal space. One thing we lack in the space travel is the lack of space in the spaceship. You know, not enough room. Almost all of the volume of the rocket is reserved for the extremely flammable rocket fuel. So you and your friend astronauts will be stuffed into a damn small cabin of the spaceship, placed on the very tip of the tall rocket. Then there comes the very nerve-wracking countdown you can't do without. Let's have it here too. 999, 998, 997, 996, 995. 4, 3, 2, 1, blast off! And while on the way to space, your rocket falls apart. Ha! No need to be scared. That's the plan. The rocket parts that have used up all the fuel gradually fall off. The flight from Earth to space is quite fast. Just 2.5 minutes. And you are flying 100 kilometers above the ground. In another 8 minutes, it's 400 kilometers. And there, orbiting with shine and pride, the International Space Station. ISS is a tiny little home for us in space. After all, going to space is not just about flying around the Earth, taking selfies and coming back home. Astronauts have a lot of important tasks to do up in here. So it's time to park your spaceship and let's take a tour around your new space home. The International Space Station is kind of a big puzzle that has been gradually pieced together by connecting various modules, and it is still expanding. It orbits Earth at the speed of almost 28,000 kilometers per hour, and each round takes about 90 minutes. That's why the astronauts can see the sunrise and sunset every 45 minutes there. ISS is the biggest thing ever built into space by mankind. On Earth, it would easily take up the whole football field. Though only a little part of it is habitable and provides as much space as a big detached house. Even after the limited habitable space, the station is as good as a quality hotel. You have your own tiny cabin to sleep in, enough variety of food, a gym, a bathroom, and the world's most expensive toilet. How about we take a tour and see for ourselves? Quite noisy, isn't it? Of course it is. The station is packed up with various technologies, making various weird sounds. Just operating the station itself requires as many as 50 computers. You simply have to get used to the ever-present humming noise. You can't sleep in such noise? Then you probably don't want to hear about the always-on lights. That's correct. For safety reasons, you can never turn off the lights at the station. Well, dealing with these inconveniences are not as difficult. You just need a sleeping mask and noise-canceling earplugs. And where are you supposed to sleep? Here, in this wall niche. I know. It looks like a small cubbyhole. And if you are accustomed to having a big sleeping space, then you may remember you can find everything in the space station, except enough space. By the way, sleeping at the station is also a tough nut to crack. Without gravity, sleeping or standing feels just the same because of the weightlessness. You simply won't get the feeling of lying down, no matter in whatever position you are. And do not expect your own bed. You have to make do with a sleeping bag. Just get in and buckle up. Why? Because you could easily find yourself flying asleep through the station, scaring other astronauts. And yeah, another catch while sleeping in space. It's good if you sleep close to a blowing fan. Otherwise, you may wake up in a bubble of exhaled air, where you won't have enough oxygen to breathe. If you think it's rather messy in here, then I must put you right on that. Everything's in its place. Although I must admit, it does look a bit like chaos, as there's no up and no down. No ceiling and no floor. Actually, there are only walls with various instruments, devices, and computers. Anyway, is anybody hungry after the flight to space? Yes? No problem. The station is packed with delicious food full of vitamins and minerals. But of course, usually it's dry convenience food that has had the water removed from it, so that it lasts long and doesn't go bad. You just add cold or hot water right before you eat it. It's like when you pour boiling water onto your instant noodle soup. The only difference is that you don't eat it from a bowl, but from a plastic bag you made it in. And because the station often hosts people of various nationalities and tastes, its menu varies too. So what would you like? Russian borscht or American beef jerky? But do not wish for food that leaves crumbs all over the place, like bread stuff, pastry, or biscuits. Crumbs flying through the station are quite dangerous. If the astronauts breathe them in, they could cough or even choke to death. Even drops of water can be treacherous here. Water in general is a trouble here. Getting enough of it to space costs a lot of money, so you have to save it. You can drink 3 liters of water per day, but you can't have a good bath or a shower. Every day, hygiene here is like that of a little baby. There are all kinds of wet wipes or washcloths to rub your body with. On the other hand, cleaning your teeth is quite ordinary, but you better swallow the toothpaste rather than spit it somewhere. And if you wonder where to put your dirty clothes, the right answer is to a waste bin. Nobody does the washing here. You simply change your clothes for new ones after a few days. Well, we've been through sleeping, food, and hygiene. Have we forgotten anything? I know, the toilet. At first sight, you probably wouldn't recognize it. It's this little cabin here with a retractable door. If your bladder is full, you can suits. They put on a pair of diapers, just in case. And we've forgotten one more thing. The station has a gym, too. Human muscles weaken in weightlessness. That's why astronauts must work out regularly. Don't expect your favorite gym equipment here. Even the 500-kilo heavy dumbbell will be as light as a feather in weightlessness. So we use sophisticated machines. But the life of astronauts is mainly about work. During the day, they supervise the station and do various research tasks or carry out some experiments. And if they have a little free time, most of them spend it looking at the most spectacular view outside their window, our beautiful blue marble. As per their work demands, the astronauts may spend several months at the International Space Station. And what's the return to Earth like? Well, it's quite a rush. Just an hour and you're back home. You get back the same way as you went there, in a spaceship you park next to the station. Before entering the atmosphere, about 140 kilometers above Earth, the cabin with the astronauts gets rid of the parts they no longer need. 5 minutes later, 100 kilometers above the ground, the cabin enters the thick Earth's atmosphere and its fiery ride starts. Why fiery? The cabin with the astronauts descends at a high speed and rubs against the particles of the atmosphere, getting extremely hot. After a while, the temperature reaches almost 2,000 degrees Celsius, sparks all around and everything shaking. Fortunately, the cabin is protected by a sophisticated heat shield, otherwise it would burn to dust. 11 kilometers above the ground, there's another trick. The cabin opens a large parachute to slow down. You don't need the heat shield any longer, so you can drop it without worry. And to make the landing as smooth as possible, you ignite several rocket engines just a second before you land on the ground. Simply, the astronauts land like in a feather bed. Well, almost like in a feather bed. They feel a nudge here and there. And then what? Nothing. Then you just wait until the rescue team finds you and tries to pull you out of the cabin. And most importantly, don't forget to put on a broad smile. After all, traveling to space is actually a piece of cake.
तो फ्रेंड्स, आई होप कि आप लोगों ने आज की ये डॉक्यूमेंट्री वीडियो एंजॉय की हो। वीडियो पसंद आई है तो जल्दी से वीडियो को लाइक कीजिए, शेयर कीजिए और अगर अभी तक चैनल को सब्सक्राइब नहीं किया है तो जल्दी से चैनल को सब्सक्राइब कीजिए और कमेंट बॉक्स में अपना फीडबैक देना ना भूलिएगा। तो अब दीजिए मुझे इजाज़त, इंशाल्लाह ताला फिर मिलेंगे किसी अच्छी सी वीडियो के साथ। टेक केयर, अल्लाह हाफिज़।